Jacob, thanks so much for being on the podcast, mate. I'm going to sound really, really dumb on this, I think, because I didn't do too well in history. But the content that you're putting out is incredible. I've been watching you on social media and everything. And, I guess you're really showing us a whole new side to the history in Newcastle. So how did it all come about?
Yeah, so I've always been quite interested in history, going back as long as I remember. I've got a little photo of myself at probably 6 years old digging in the school field that the teacher took just to show my mum. And I was like, oh, I love that photo. So we printed it off and put it on the fridge. And from there, I kind of just got more and more interested in archaeology and history and local history, but also ancient history, like ancient Egypt and all those kind of societies of the past. And I think it's really the mystery that appealed to me. So then over the years, I kind of found myself more and more drawn to history. Mm-hmm. And I think as I was in my early teens when I started making these videos, history-style videos, I think there weren't too many people in my social circle that I could really connect with when it comes to history or old things or just, the past. So social media and these online forums and online video making were a bit of an outlet for me, I think, to connect with other people. Quite often it was people, in America that might have been really into Civil War history or in Europe somewhere. So I think that's why I started. Mm-hmm. And then from there it's kind of just developed. And over the years I've just found a passion for storytelling. I used to still do make quite, medium, long format YouTube videos, but these real short form videos that have been taking off over the past 5 or so years, just in general, I've found it a bit of a challenge because you've got to compact everything, but there's definitely an opportunity there because as I've seen, as you mentioned, people are taking an interest in it. Mm.
How much effort? Because the videos, make movies, the videos you're putting together, they will take you a fair bit of time.
They do, yeah. So even though they're only 60 seconds long, I've got to try and make sure I hit all the main points because they can be quite complex topics. So I think the time-consuming part isn't necessarily the production; it's the pre-production.
Pre-production, putting it all together, doing the research.
Yes. And then there's been times where I've gone out to a site and I've because I like to film on location because I think that's quite part of it and quite impactful. Yeah. And I might film at a site and then I'll get back and I'll start editing. I'm like, I don't feel like this has hit the mark, so I'll go back and do it again. Yeah, right. But yeah, I try and keep the filming and the actual production side of it quite simple and kind of organic because I think people resonate with that a little better. Mm-hmm. But the research side, turning a complex topic into something that's easily understood and interesting for broad audiences is the time consuming part.
I love when I watch the videos when you'll be like here at this site and it puts you there. It really it grabs me. Yeah. But like when you're doing them, like I've seen that video you done of like Burwood and the Burwood estate and everything. Where do you even start to? I'd never heard of any of that. So like to think, are you just searching random suburbs? Like where does your pre-production or kind of research begin? Do you get a lead from something, or do you just kind of go to an area and go, I want to know more about this? Like how does that evolve?
Yeah, I think Newcastle we're lucky, or I'm lucky in the fact that I was brought up here. So there's all these different topics over the years, and being interested in history, you kind of gravitate towards those things. So there's a lot of sources for the topics to come from, I guess. But for some of the more obscure topics, I've gone on to Trove, which is like it's like a search engine for different databases of like archives. And you can do search terms and keyword searches, and I'd put in something like Newcastle mystery, in quotation marks, and you can look through newspapers from like the 1930s all the way back wild. To like the 1820s. Yeah.
And what are they, scans or photos?
So they're scans, and then it's like an OCR, like the computer recognizes text within the image because there's millions of these scans, so they're not human transcribed. It's computer transcribed, so they're not always accurate, but
who's scanning them all in?
So it's different databases. So you've got the National Archives, so Australian Archives, different state archives, so New South Wales, Queensland, South Australia, and then smaller community organisations and universities, and then Trove kind of searches through all of them. It's like a bit of a search engine, yeah. So it's amazing how much we have access to. It's just there's so much of it. It can be a bit of overload, and you do need to know how to use that website.
Yeah.
Yeah. But besides that, some of the other topics, I might be, talking to an older person, or someone might have said, or a good recent one is actually my day job. My manager said, my son was telling me about an elephant graveyard. And I was like, an elephant graveyard?
Lion King.
Yeah. I was like, that's a unique topic. So I looked into it, and I found a newspaper article from 1968 on Trove, and it was about a circus that was happening in the middle of Newcastle. An elephant fell off the truck and died, and then in that article they said that the elephant would be buried somewhere where the council determines. But I couldn't find where this elephant was buried, because I thought this would make an interesting video, elephant graveyard, where elephants from the circus are buried. Anyways, I only found out today that the elephant was actually put through basically a meat mincer and turned into fertilizer.
Really?
So, yeah, but to get that information, I had to go through. Newcastle Council has a great local history section, and they're quite helpful, and they were able to pull up some more articles that hadn't yet been publicly released. Mm-hmm. And that's how I found out that it got turned into fertilizer. So not the most exciting story.
But it all started with someone just mentioning it.
Yes, yeah. And her son had just heard it on Reddit or something. It was a bit of an urban legend. So I can still create a video in that kind of aspect, but there unfortunately isn't an elephant graveyard.
When you're hearing things like this, I'm not sure if you've studied or went to university in that, but I remember when I was going through uni, I was really big on where you're sourcing stuff from. When you hear a comment around like elephant graveyard, what do you take with like a grain of salt, or go, hang on, I'm going to actually put a bit of time into researching this or not?
Yeah, I think always like the being factual and making sure what I'm saying is as correct as it can be is a big part of what I believe in.
Yeah.
So I'm, if possible, going to the primary source or a newspaper that was published that day, or as a report that's peer reviewed, something like that, which is rare in these obscure kind of tidbits of history. But yeah, it's quite important to me to make sure that what's being said is factual. But with some of the stories that are a bit more left of field, a little bit more obscure, you kind of have to present it in a way that's like, this is what this person
Bit of
said.
fun.
Yeah, so one of the ones I've got coming up is a video I've got coming up. It's about a man that worked at the New South Wales State Dockyard. He was an immigrant from Germany. This was in the 1970s, so he'd come out just after the war working in the dockyard, and then he decided one day to make the claim to the newspaper that he personally burnt Hitler's body after Hitler died in the bunker in April of 1945. And yeah, so he came out to the newspaper and said this, and the newspaper article in the Newcastle Herald was, "I burnt Hitler's body." And then, I just randomly came across that a few months ago, and I've just been piecing bits and pieces together, because this guy kind of just went off the face of the earth after he said after he made that claim.
Died?
No, I don't think he died, but I couldn't find anything else about him or from him.
So with your research with this, you're just trying to find out if it's just all a hoax or if it happened, or?
Yeah, well, I'd say that's more than likely a hoax, but it's an interesting story that it was, a Newcastle dockyard worker that's just randomly said, I was a personal aide to Hitler, I was in the bunker at the time, and I burnt his body the next day. And there's that just by chance Newcastle connection. So it's stories like that, he probably didn't burn Hitler's body. He might have either been wanting attention or something else could have been happening there. But the fact that out of nowhere he said this, and at the time he was a manager at the dockyard, and from what I've read, the people that were reporting up to him weren't turning up to work because they didn't want to work with the man that was associated with.
So they were believing it?
Yeah, they were believing it at the time.
Really?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
So I think he ended up getting fired, and there was like an unfair dismissal case, and it's one I'm still kind of looking into a little bit, but it's those.
And this was in the 60s?
This was 1973
that
he came out and said it. But yeah, obviously in the 40s he was still over in Germany, and that was verified by the paper.
So with something like this, and just going back to like kind of like trying to seek out the truth, how deep do you go? Do you look at the kind of the information at the time and then look at if that was factual or not, or do you try to do interviews with people that might have worked with him at the dockyard? Like how, or do you just kind of get to a point, like if there's an article that you find is it Trover?
Trove.
So you go to Trove and you find an article, do you then question that article and go again, or do you kind of...
Yeah. I try and bring in as many sources as possible, because sometimes, newspapers do get it wrong. So you try and find as many articles as possible. And I wish I had the time and the resources to, fully hone down on every topic and reach out to whoever's around, which is what I've done in my full-length documentary. I interviewed 10 of the guys that were actually there to make sure everything was factual. Yeah. And, that involved on Trove, or on the National Archives website, there was a 456-page document from the time. So it involved going through every page of that and making sure that, what was being presented is the truth, because sometimes this is the first time it's been brought up in decades, or, more than a century in some cases. So I want to make sure that what I'm telling people is accurate.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you just done that with the 40-minute doco you've just released?
Yes.
I was going to get to that later, but we may as well just chat about it now. Do you want to share a bit?
Yeah, so it's about the Stockton Bight disaster, which was this military training disaster that happened in 1954. So basically what happened there were 184 of these troops. Some of them were national service, which is like conscription basically, like forced service. And some of them were voluntary reserve units, force troops, sorry. And they all went out on this training mission in these amphibious vehicles, which, put simply, it's like a tank that can go in the water. They all went out on this training mission from Camp Shortland, which is near Nobbies, up to Broughton Island. But as soon as they got out off the heads, out past Nobbies, there was a huge change in sea state, and unfortunately 12 of the vehicles were either disabled or sank. And
this was the training?
Yeah, it was just a training exercise, and it just went like horribly wrong. And then, so multiple of the men, a few ended up deceased. They died. One of them, the body was never recovered, never found. Others were, pulled onto the beach, onto the shore, because many of them actually couldn't swim, which was, if you're in an amphibious unit, like doing an amphibious water training exercise, you'd think mandatory to swim, but most of them couldn't, just because of, I guess the era at the time. So after it all happened, there was a big thing in the media about it, because it was very, like, everyone could see it, and there were so many people involved. It's not really something you could put a lid on. But afterwards, there were actions taken by the military, I guess is the way to say it, to kind of keep some of these people's mouths shut. Just
really,
don't go talking to people about it.
Yeah.
And because there are a few other things involved. One of the colonel that was running the whole exercise, his 11-year-old kid was on board, which wasn't meant to be happening. And there were a lot of other moving bits and pieces. When I first heard about the story, I was like, why isn't there a film made on this? And I went down the route of doing it formally. I reached out to a production company, and they said you needed funding first, and you needed X amount of dollars, and it would take a couple of years. And I was thinking, these guys in 92 had a minimum. 91, 92, I don't have a couple of years to get, because there's only 10 of the guys left out of 184.
Yeah, wow.
So I thought I'll just start it.
How'd you get in touch with the guys?
Facebook.
Really?
Yeah, so I put a post up on Lost Newcastle. It's a local group, like a history focused group. And I said, and
they're all on Facebook?
Well, their daughters or sons. One of them actually is. And I'm like, you're doing well.
Yeah.
I turned up to his house to do his interview. He had an Apple Watch on.
Really?
Yeah, he was on Facebook.
Good on him.
Yeah. Another guy reached out to me via email. He said, I can see you're doing this story. I was there that night. I'm 23 years old now. And
how's that feel when you get that email from him?
Oh, I was like, this is, made my day, made my week. And I turn up to their houses, and they're doing so well most of these guys were doing so well for their age, and they were so switched on and able to recall it like to incredible detail. And having interviewing 10 people, you get quite a wide perspective and a mix of perspectives. But there were so many details that were like they all checked the same boxes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well.
Like the first guy I interviewed, Warren, he spoke about having to let off flares because their engine stopped and they were taking on water. Then the other guy said, I noticed there were flares going off behind me. And when I checked the records, he was in front of Warren.
Wow.
So it's like things like that. And one other guy, John Morrow, his name is, I interviewed him up at Fort Scratchley. And he mentioned that when they were bringing people on board their vehicle, because the other vehicle had sunk, that he counted 12. I went and read the records. 12 men were brought on board.
Really?
I was like, that's just, after 72 years.
That's wild.
It was wild. It's like, because it was such a traumatic event for them.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of just etched in, and they would have had to there were internal investigations afterwards, and I think they would have had to recount some of the events. But for all these, over the decades, there hasn't been too much brought up about this incident because I think they felt that they weren't meant to be talking about it or shouldn't be talking about it because it was kind of just from the defense, the military's perspective, it was kind of just, let's move on. Just don't worry about that. Even though at the time, I think it was the biggest army peacetime disaster ever.
Really?
Yeah, and it held that record up until there was a helicopter crash a few years ago.
Wow.
So it was like such a major event and a huge event for Newcastle in terms of like devastating event and traumatic event. And so when I heard about it, I was like, this needs to be recorded in a way that can be accessed and not forgotten.
Now, a couple of things. Did any of these guys I haven't seen the doco. Did any of them re-meet? Did you bring them all together in the doco?
So I haven't, but on the 8th of March, that's the anniversary.
Yeah.
I've got a screening at Tower Cinemas, so they're all going to be there. The ones that can make it there, unfortunately. A few
Is that just ticketed?
Ticketed, but I've got them complimentary tickets. But
Great.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, if someone's listening and want to go, they can grab tickets and go. I'm going to come. That's awesome to know.
Yeah. No, the guy from Tower Cinemas reached out to me and said, love to screen it there, and he's able to put it at the concessional ticket rate. So I was like, oh, that's wonderful. And to get these guys together on the anniversary.
So that's like in a week or something. Next week.
Yeah.
The week after.
Yeah. 8th of March. So I'm very much looking forward to that and to have them all there because some of them haven't met since they did have like get-togethers every year, but they weren't all involved. Some of these guys haven't seen each other in probably 70 years.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, so that'll be very good.
What does it feel like for you to be documenting something so important for Newcastle?
Oh, it's definitely a big I feel quite a big responsibility, especially with that particular event because you've got loss of life, you've got quite a bit of trauma that these people carried, so I had to be very careful when I was doing the interview as well.
Yeah.
Especially going into it without too much knowledge myself because a lot of it wasn't recorded. But being able to share that with the broader community in Newcastle and share it in a way that's going to be around for
timeless.
Yeah, timeless. Exactly, timeless. It's very special.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So this your fascination with history is now evolving into a point where you're leaving documents that people now can research, study, and appreciate years to come.
Yeah. I'm looking to go down the path of more original research or uncovering things that are just a single mention in a newspaper and then kind of unpacking that and piecing things together. I'm just about to start a Master of History, so doing that postgrad study is going to open up a lot more in terms of skill and understanding, I'm hoping. So
yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Is there something that you've discovered, found, heard, seen, kind of researched around Newcastle that's just absolutely blown your mind?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is I was on Trove. I looked up Newcastle robbery or something like that, and I found a mention from 1930 of a bank in Broadmeadow that was robbed. But the way it happened, the guy that was looking after the bank, there was one of them there. He went out the front to get rid of his rubbish. He came back in. He found that the bank had been robbed, but the door locked behind him. There was no back door. Somehow the bank had been robbed in the 2 minutes he was gone. And it was this whole mystery in the newspapers at the time. And it wasn't until almost a year later that there was a new manager. So the old guy got the sack or he moved on. New manager standing by the till and he could feel a bit of a squeak in the floor, lifted up the carpet and there was a trap door that had been cut in the floorboards of the bank.
What?
So whoever robbed the bank had tunnelled under the bank in Broadmeadow. This is on like right near Nine Ways. Tunnelled under the bank, had cut this perfect trapdoor, and then had come up when the guy had left, taken everything out of the till, which was like £250 or something. It wasn't really that much money, but it was middle of the Depression, so it was valuable. And then had gone back down. So apparently the tunnel would have taken like weeks to dig. And then he did this perfect trapdoor, and the newspaper described it as being like perfect carpentry. So it was like someone skilled in that.
Yeah,
And they never found out who it was.
Never found out who it was.
Never found out who it was.
Yeah, I wonder how he timed it that he knew he's
I know.
left too.
Yeah,
Like, imagine popping it up and they're just looking at you.
Well, a few people in the comments suggested inside job maybe.
Yeah,
So,
that's where my mind went
Yeah.
straight away.
yeah.
I'm probably going to absolutely butcher this story. I'm hoping that you've heard of it or no. Have you been to England?
No, I haven't. Not
Okay, so when I was there, I went to. I love going. Like, I just go to these pubs, and they're like 400 or 500 years old. Just sitting there having a beer and just thinking about the conversations that have been had in here, and like the stories that were told within the walls. And anyways, one of the pubs, forget where and forget the exact story, but essentially there was this wives' tale that these bandits had robbed a bank and they were traveling through the country, and they stayed in the pub upstairs or whatever, and they hid all this gold or money in the walls. And this was a story that went for, it was like a wives' tale for hundreds of years. And it wasn't like till like recently new, like it's gone through just generations.
Yeah.
It's just this like story. This is like written on the wall in the pub, like where you have lunch and have beer and stuff. And someone goes, "Oh, we're going to do renos and like move, like times are getting on." Pulled down a wall and it was all behind. It was true.
So it was really.
It was real. So they've obviously taken it out, but then they've made it so it's like a feature.
Yeah.
And it's got the story and stuff. But it's just like, how cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Those things that you think is like an urban myth, an urban legend, and it turns out to be true. Yeah. And it's like some of the bushranger stories you hear in Australia of them robbing, pubs or banks, whatever, and then stashing it away in a cave somewhere. And it's like, oh, I wonder how many of these are actually true. Yeah. It's fascinating.
Yeah. Does AI help you find this stuff, or like how's that contributing to your research?
I've used AI in sometimes it's like, this is a topic. Can you see if there are any sources that I've missed? So can you collate
like a deep search?
Yeah, deep search into, if there's any sources, then from there I'll go to the sources. I have tried, can you provide information on this, and then I've cross-checked it with the sources, and sometimes it's fabricated information, so I'm like, I'm not going to risk it. Yeah. But for collating sources to start with, definitely, because there's sometimes someone might have written a thesis on it, or even like a high school paper on it back in the 80s, and they might have interviewed someone that was involved in that topic that's no longer alive today, and then that document might be uploaded as a PDF somewhere, and then it might pluck that out of the abyss. So yeah, it's definitely handy in that way.
Yeah. Do you think it's going to get to a point where like it can really help bring stuff up?
Yeah, I'd love there to be an option where it's like only factual content, if that makes sense, or like only peer-reviewed content, or.
Well, this is the whole thing with AI.
Yeah.
Is because think about how much fake content's out there now. And in 10, 15 years, when it's doing searches and looking for what to grab as information, it's got to filter through all the... It's going to be going with all the fake shit that people's creating.
Yeah, 100%. So I think there's a bit of a leap still to go in that aspect, but I'd be excited when there is, because there's just... For some topics, there's just barely any information. It's like right in the deep, dark corners of the web, and it just takes a long time to find. And then sometimes there's so much information, it's just like information overload. Because one kind of resource I find quite helpful is whenever there's a development somewhere, especially if it's a public, like council development, they get quite intense archaeological reports and heritage reports done. Okay. And these are like 200-page documents, and they do all because they're paid to do it, they do heaps of research on that particular area. For that Burwood topic, there was an archaeological report on that area, and it's very helpful because they do a lot of research, and it's going to be legit. And
that's all just like available for the public?
Yes, yeah. So the council, Newcastle Council, if it's a public development, or like when they redid Dixon Park Beach, the footpath there was a huge report done on that, and it's publicly available on their website. So yeah, it's not the easiest to find or the easiest to read, but yeah, it was a gold mine for me. Yeah.
So yeah, is there any obviously you've just released the documentary, you're going to be screening it next week or the week after. Do you have any other projects that you're kind of working on that you kind of wanted you can share, I guess?
Yeah, for sure. So with the Stockton Bite film, that really focused on the survivor stories and the kind of narrative, or the full chronological start and finish of what happened. But I'm also doing a film diving some of the wrecks that are still out there in Stockton Bite. So we filmed one LVT landing vehicle tracked like armoured tank wreck, and there's a couple more out there that are in 35 metres of water. So I've done my full diving certification and the deep diving certificate and everything you need to go out and actually dive these wrecks. And yeah,
Did you do that just for this?
I've always been wanting to dive.
Yeah.
I was always a bit afraid of it, and then this gave me a reason to do it.
And you're diving out at Stockton, where all the sharks are.
Yeah. The guys that I interviewed, they said, we saw flashes in the water. You know, it's known as Shark Alley. So I'll make sure I go on a clear day, and there'll be a few of us there.
Yeah.
But
sharks are there on clear days too. Like,
yeah, I know.
I just done my PADI certificate in Indo last year. I won't go out. I won't dive out near Stockton.
All right. Well, I'll retract my invite that I was going to give you. No, it'll be all right. 35 metres under, they don't go that far. No, there's a few guys I'm going with. One guy has a boat, so which is what you need to get out that far.
Yeah.
And going to capture some footage of what those wrecks look like because they're still down there sitting on the bottom of the ocean floor.
Tanks,
yeah. So they're like water-going tanks, basically. They looked like a tank with a little turret on the front, but they were like a boat tank, but still had the tracks on the side.
This is wild.
I know. I didn't know it was a thing either until I heard about this disaster. They had the tracks on the side that would go, and that was what would push them through the water. That was what they used as propulsion.
Really?
Yeah. So it looked like.
So how many are out there?
Well, about 6, I think.
What?
Yeah.
All like close to each other?
No. So
They're spread
basically
out.
from where Stockton Surf Club is, and about a kilometre offshore, all the way up to Berrubi.
How far out? Off land?
Probably a kilometre.
Really?
Yeah. Well, 30 metres of water, so it's a fair way out.
Yeah.
And only a couple of them have been rediscovered using like a fish finder.
Have you been out there yet?
No, not yet.
Okay.
No, I'm looking forward to it though.
How are you 100% they're there?
I know a couple of people that have dived them. And I've got photos, and we did a test dive on another one of these LVTs that have sunk up at Fingal Bay, and that was only in 6 metres of water, so you could kind of just kick your way out to it offshore.
How big are they?
7 metres, so about the size of this carpet here. So 7 metres long and a couple metres wide, or 3 metres wide. So really not that big. So it's like a needle in a haystack almost.
Still.
Yeah. But and they usually held a crew of less than 10 probably. So and on this when this disaster happened, one of them had 30 men aboard when it came into shore, and the thing flipped over. So a lot of them did, meet their fate pretty close to the breakers, pretty close to shore. So some of them were recovered. About 12 vehicles were either disabled or sinking. But yeah, there still are some that were so deep or so far out that they weren't able to recover them and then just left them. So they still have the ammunition on board. They still have,
Really?
Yeah. Some of the photos I've seen, they've still got, you can see the ammo because it's like copper and brass, and the sand moving past kind of gives it a polished look. It's just this big rusty machine and then some rounds lined up. So,
really?
Yeah. So it's going to be incredible experience. I can't
Yeah, don't worry about the sharks. If you need some company, I'll come.
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah. And one of the guys I'm going to go with is hopefully going to do a 3D model using photogrammetry. So getting a bunch of stills of the whole thing and then creating like a 3D model online. So it kind of creates a snapshot of what that wreck looks like at this point in time. And then if someone wants to do the same thing in 20 years' time, you can kind of see the difference between the two, but also a lot of people aren't going to be able to physically, or they just don't have the time to go dive 30 metres off Stockton Beach, or they don't want to see the sharks. So to have that kind of available for people to go and interact with online on their own devices, or if we get it up in the museum or get it up in the library somewhere.
And what is your mission with this?
To kind of just create a snapshot and preserve the story for future, because we're not too far away from it not being able to be told firsthand.
Yeah.
Which is what the purpose of the first one was. And then this second one is just to show how real it is. These items are still out there in the water.
There's going to be another film.
Yes, yeah. Not quite as long, and it's going to focus more on the modern day interpretation of what happened, and just showing what the wrecks look like today, and the fact that it's still out there, not too far from where we're sitting today, really, in the grand scheme of things. And
how long have they been there for?
72 years. Yeah.
Wow.
So these tanks, or these LVTs, these vehicles, they were actually used in the war up in the Pacific in the Second World War, World War II. during the 1940s. And then after the war, they were brought back and they were used as training vehicles, primarily in Newcastle, because Newcastle held the only amphibious army unit in the Commonwealth in all of Australia. So, yeah, these vehicles are ex-World War II, and then they finally met their fate on this during this training event.
Is there anything about, like whether it's the history of Newcastle or just doing research or anything that just really frustrates you?
I think the gaps in information are both frustrating and also kind of motivating, because it's like a puzzle. It's like the whole thing's just a huge puzzle, any part of history really, whereas you've got to get all the little bits. And I'm just trying to, complete the puzzle and show people, I guess, is the simplified way of what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
But the frustrating points are when there's a dead end. So that elephant story is a great example. It was a couple months ago that I first read that this elephant called Jody had died, and they'd buried it somewhere at the council's discretion. And I was like, okay, where am I going to go from here? And I thought I would reach out to these local history experts with the council, and they were able to access documents that I wasn't, that aren't publicly available, and then we're able to finish the story, or to an extent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the most frustrating part is the gaps, which is why I do enjoy the stories where there is still a personal connection, or there are still people around that can recall those events or that particular topic, and capturing that information so it'll be less frustrating for people in future that are trying to piece together a puzzle that has missing pieces.
Is there a big community doing what you're doing?
I think with history, and especially with local history, it's mainly older people. People when they get into retirement, they start looking within themselves or tracing their family tree, and then they find an interest in a particular area of history. Right. Yeah, so I think in the format that I'm doing in terms of short form, there's a guy in Sydney that does it, and he does a great job, and I've spoken to him before, and he's doing very similar to what I'm doing. But besides that, in terms of Newcastle, not particularly, no. Most of it's written reports or blog posts, things like that, which aren't widely accessible or easily marketed as a social media video.
How important do you feel like the work you're doing is?
I like to hope that it's important. I find probably my favourite aspect is that people are sharing their own stories, whether it be their family stories, or they say to me, "Oh, I've gone and spoken to my grandma about this. It turns out she was just up the road when that happened, and she's shared more about her childhood that I never knew." Or some people have said, using your videos, we've done a bit of a day trip, with the family, with the kids, to go out and check out some of this history.
Wow.
So that's always very heartwarming to read that people are taking an interest where they might not have otherwise. Yeah.
I feel as if just like the passion and the effort you're going to just needs to be like recognised and appreciated. I just feel like if you weren't doing this, like how much of this content would be getting put out there and preserving these stories of like, it's kind of made the city like what it is.
Yeah, because Newcastle, we've got such a diverse history.
Yeah,
I think, which is what impresses me. Like late last year, I went overseas to Greece and to Italy, and it was amazing to see all this history. But then come back here and you think you'd be disappointed, but you've got so much here as well, like such a diverse range. You've got all the industrial history, World War II history, you've got Indigenous history going back thousands of years, and then you've got all these little stories that are not overly known because they're not overly appreciated, I think. So, yeah, the more obscure the story, I think the more excited I get about it.
Yeah.
Like that Burwood Tunnel story that we mentioned earlier. It was just such a random little story that's kind of just been swept under the rug because it's just a tunnel. It's just a little tunnel that some guy made. But the impact of that, going forward, and the fact it was the first road tunnel in Australia, the fact it became the first publicly accessible tramway in Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If someone hadn't seen that video, do you want to just mention? Because I feel like we keep talking about it. We keep someone's out. Tell me this story already.
So basically the story is that there was this guy called James Mitchell. He was a doctor and a bit of an entrepreneur in Newcastle. And at the time, this was in the 1830s, 1840s, the Australian Agricultural Company had basically a monopoly on coal. So no one else was able to sell or use coal that was found within the colony, within New South Wales. So this guy, James Mitchell, he had coal on his land. He couldn't use it. He couldn't sell it. A lot of the time people were kind of doing it under the table anyway. But for the most part, he had a lot of coal, couldn't do anything with it. So he told people that he was going to make a salt works in at Burwood Beach, which is near Glenrock, and he needed a tram line to get it from Glenrock up through the hill where Scenic Drive is, and then down to the port to be distributed. Now, to do that, he had to dig a tunnel, so he dug a tunnel through his land that he had ownership of, which is now Glenrock, Scenic Drive, and that top end of Merewether. Dug a tunnel through there, pulled out thousands of tons of coal, coincidentally. He told it was coincidental. And then made this tramway. But the AA company said, you can't, you've got this coal. The government's then given him permission to be able to sell the coal, but the AA company said, you're not allowed to take it across our land. And they owned everything from the junction all the way up to the port. So he basically had to get it off his rail, put it on horse and cart, take it into town. Anyway, it became this whole thing. It went through Parliament. There were all these different acts of Parliament introduced to allow, first of all, him to sell the coal or to use the coal, and then for him to take the coal by rail over AA company land. And AA had a lot of, Australian Agricultural Company had a lot of land around everywhere. So there were all these acts of Parliament that kind of took the monopoly away from this company, Australian Agricultural Company, and allowed individuals to, create their own companies or mines and things. And then that tramway was then open to the public, so anyone could use it, paying a fee. And it just kind of had a bit of a domino effect. And it kind of was all based around this tunnel. I use the tunnel as kind of the anchor for that story. And then the impact that had at the time, because it was quite a big change for the colony, because from there was all this coal frenzy, I guess. Everyone was opening up coal mines everywhere, which has kind of led to the city that we know today. Whereas before that, it was just AA company, and there was a shortage because they couldn't meet the demand, supply and demand issue. So this solved that issue, and I'm sure there's a lot of Newcastle that wouldn't be the same today if that didn't happen.
And when did this happen?
So it was 1830s, 1840s. So 1846 is when he dug the tunnel, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, wow.
And then in 1851 is when he was able to actually get it across, the coal across to the port.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. So there's so many interesting stories. And then I end up going down like rabbit holes.
I was going to say.
Yeah. I'm trying to keep my story straight at the moment because then you can start like doing that story. Then I start looking into the junction and looking at all the other tram lines that might have been coming in, or what things were like at the port at the time. He ended up building staiths or a wharf on Crown land and at the port because the AA company had theirs and he had his, and there's so many different aspects. And I think that's another, going back to how do I find the stories to tell? They kind of sometimes overlap a bit, or I might uncover something while researching one thing. So, for example, with the Burwood tram line video, Burwood tunnel video, I was looking at an old map from the 1850s of James Mitchell's Burwood estate, which is Glenrock and Merewether now. And I noticed there was a big oval that said racecourse, and I was like, that's where the Beaches Hotel is there now. That's almost where the Merewether Surf Club is. So I started looking into Newcastle's old racecourses and found out the first major racecourse in Newcastle was literally right where the Beaches Hotel is.
Really?
Yeah. So the Beaches Hotel is like the southern end of the racecourse, and it would have gone up towards the junction, I guess.
Wow.
Yeah. And
when was that?
1840s, and it closed in 1850s.
What?
So it operated for only about 10 years, but it was like people were coming up from Sydney in the later years, in the end of its life, because the train line opened. And but there was newspaper articles about it, and the people that were winning, and I think the guy whose horse won the first race was Ranclawd, Mr. Ranclawd, and the street that runs right through where the old racecourse was behind Beaches Hotel is Ranclawd Street. So I don't know if I haven't been able to find if that's because of that.
Surely.
Yeah.
Surely.
But
wow.
Yeah, reading some of these old newspapers, you go, oh, I recognise that name because of there's a street named after that. Yeah. So I think just because I end up kind of going down these holes of research, it kind of opens up new topics as well in that way.
And when you're doing that, you're just following whatever you're interested in?
Basically, yeah. I kind of just go off. Before I was doing these Newcastle-centric videos, I was still looking into these things. I was just doing it out of personal interest.
Yeah.
But then I thought, you know what, I'll make some videos about these topics and people took interest in it. So it kind of starts with what I'm interested in. And I'm hoping if I'm interested in it and I present it in a way that's interesting to people, other people might find it interesting as well.
And you still following that approach, or are you trying to predict what people might like? Are there things where you might go, oh, I don't really think this is interesting, but I think people will, so I'll do a video on it?
I try and I find it difficult if I'm not interested in a topic to make a video authentically about it, because people do suggest ideas. So I've got a very long list of I've got like a spreadsheet with 150 rows. So there's a lot of topics that have kind of just on the back burner, and then it's either because there's not enough information, or it's not the right time, or there's just not something that interests me at the moment, because I've got limited time. I'm doing this, the research after work during the week, and then filming on weekends and everything like that. So it's
what about controversial stuff? Is there anything that you're like you're loving, but you're like, oh, I won't put this out because it might be too controversial? Some people might still be alive, or
I was hesitant with the Stockton Bight thing because it was Stockton Bight disaster film, because
they told not to talk about it and everything.
Yeah, and also because it was a trauma for them. I didn't want to contribute to something, but it actually. I was speaking to one of the daughters of the guys today, and they said they watched the video and it was like a something they can now put it behind them, if that makes sense. They feel that
it allows them to shut the door on it.
Yeah, and they feel that they've been acknowledged.
Yeah,
and then what happened has been acknowledged for them, which was very moving to read.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. So, but in terms of controversial events, someone suggested a few weeks ago about it's not necessarily controversial, but it wasn't the right time. It was a shark attack that happened in Cooks Hill during one of the events, like competitions at Cooks Hill Surf Club, and someone was basically mauled by a shark in front of everyone. But this was right after the few attack incidents in Sydney, so I thought it's not the right time to be probably bringing that up.
You think you will do it, but in the future?
At one time, yeah, because it is interesting, and a lot of people do recall it.
Yeah,
or did recall it, and it was it was big news at the time. It was 1949, but I just wouldn't feel right doing it so close to that, because it seems like you're kind of piggybacking off someone's traumatic event, a traumatic incident, and making it like clickbaity, and so I just didn't feel that was the right time for that. So a few of those topics I've just kind of put on the back burner, put them in the list that I will get to at some point. There's just so many topics I want to cover in such limited time that I have available.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Like when you were overseas, just going back a little bit, but tying it into this, all the things that we've been talking about and a lot of the stuff you put out on social media has kind of taken place over the last couple of 100 years, which is very recent.
Yeah.
When we think about like history,
Yeah.
When you were traveling, how did you find? Like, I just want to know, like personally, what was that like hearing stories from like thousands of years?
Yeah, it's insane. Because I lost for words there. It's someone that loves history so much. When you're standing somewhere where someone stood 2,000 years ago, it's like, it was insane. We went to Pompeii in Italy, and that was just, walking down the streets that someone walked down 2,000 years ago was just, since that, Pompeii is an example, since the disaster, the volcanic eruption happened in 79 AD, you're walking down streets that are just as they were 2,000 years ago. And just thinking about, how the people lived, and like you mentioned in England, in some of those old pubs, thinking about the kind of people that were there, the stories they were telling, what their lives were like, it's just like there's no words to describe.
It's kind of hard to understand.
Yeah.
I remember when I was standing at the pyramids and like sitting there like trying to understand how old.
You can't comprehend it.
Like, and then I heard a fact that Cleopatra is born closer to the iPhone than the pyramids, and I was just like, what?
Yeah, it's like, because to understand anything, you're kind of trying to relate to that, and some of these places you just can't, because it's just so far away. It's like if you're talking about World War II today, you're thinking, okay, well, my grandfather was 5 years old, or my grandfather was in the war if you're a bit older, so you can kind of relate to it in that way. But when you're looking at the pyramids or Roman Empire or ancient Greece, ancient Rome, you can't, because it was just so far back. Like, that's generations ago. So yeah, it does give you this kind of like other, like, out of world feeling about it, because they're similar in everyone, like they're human like we are, but there's no one around to kind of contextualize that for you, which I think is what makes it interesting to people as well.
Do you appreciate that history on a different level, knowing like we've got all these records and databases and like their history like didn't have that, so it's kind of it probably gone through like paper and stone and different, like they've documented in different ways, but still to have that information now, so is just so much more impressive.
Like with older societies. Yeah, I think because the archaeological record is kind of the keystone that they need for those instances where it's so far back that written record is hard to come by, which I think is what makes it more fascinating for people, because there's only little bits of information, which is where conspiracy theories can sometimes come in. But it's interesting in the fact that people have to maybe make their own mind up about things, or the mystery is what keeps bringing people in. Like with the terracotta warriors in China, I haven't been, but I'd love to one day. But the actual main part of that burial complex hasn't been excavated.
Yeah. And
some people think it's because that mystery is what brings people in to that site, because you can see the terracotta warriors, but you can't actually see the burial complex, like where the emperor was buried, because it hasn't been excavated. And the theory is that maybe the Chinese government doesn't want to excavate it, because then people will know, oh, well, it's not as exciting as we thought it was.
But there's a lot of that too, like in Turkey. What's the oldest one? The oldest ruin site there's like 12,000.
Oh yeah.
What is it?
With the Turkish name.
Yeah, I'm having a complete mind blank. But like a lot of that's hasn't been excavated properly.
Yes, yeah. I would love to go there one day. I think that's definitely, like with Pompeii as well, I think a third of it hasn't been excavated, and that's partly because they want to preserve it in case something happens to the exposed part. But it's also, it gives people something to wonder about, I think. And, they call them the 7 wonders of the world because there's something not known about most of them. And I think that aspect of mystery kind of appeals to the masses, which I think is part of my, similarly with my videos, there's always a bit of mystery aspect to it. And I think that can appeal to people whether or not you like history, which I think has kind of contributed to the success of those videos.
Talking internationally, like what history appeals to you, and do you think you would do more videos, or maybe have like a second channel dedicated to any like other like places?
I love anything that again has a mystery to it, but some of those societies that have just been either completely wiped out, or there's record of them being there, like that group in Turkey, but they didn't really have a written record. There's nothing left of that. You've got Easter Island, the Easter Island heads.
Yeah.
Those kind of topics where you've just got the archaeological remains. You don't have any written record. And then there's a bit more puzzle work to do. I find that quite interesting. And then kind of subcultures or sub-societies. So say like in Paris, you've got the catacombs, which are somewhat recent, but within those catacombs, there were people living in there, creating their own society. So those kind of narrowed down portions of a larger topic. So the larger topic being the catacombs and the burial practices in Paris and what Paris was like at that time. But then you've got the people that were living in there, why they were living in there, what they were doing in there, how that changed that. So I like narrowing down. Like, you've got ancient Egypt, but then you've got, talking about Cleopatra, you could narrow down to Cleopatra.
You like it's not really like personalising it, but like getting down to like an individual.
Yes, yeah. The human aspect of it, I guess, is how you could put it.
Yeah. Do you think you'd start like a sub channel on like different societies, or?
Yeah, at some point, talking on that kind of subculture perspective angle, I did put a thing out on the Newcastle Reddit page saying, are there any urban legends? So things like that also interest me. Like with the elephant, we've heard this. How true is that? And then kind of looking into that. So I think on a broader scale, there's a lot of opportunity for that around the world. You've got things like in Italy, there's a lot of ghost towns, like cities that were built and then people just left up and left. So talking about the human reasoning behind that, and it's always the personal stories that interest me. So exploring that in a way that's interesting to people, and has that aspect of mystery, I think.
Is there someone's work that you just look up to? Like,
yeah, there's a group of guys on YouTube. This first thing that comes to mind. They're called Yes Theory, and they do a lot of. You've seen them, yeah. They do a lot of travel around the world, going to different, lesser traveled places, lesser visited places, and then speaking to people that are in those places, and getting firsthand accounts of what that particular topic is like. So something like that, but in a history sense, I think would be great. Whether it be going to somewhere in Scandinavia where they do a specific type of book printing or something like that, and speaking to someone that still runs a book printing workshop, and really honing down on that particular portion of history and how that's still living on or not living on, I think would be really fascinating to me, and I hope I'd say it potentially be interesting to other people.
I think that's the thing that is so appealing about what you're putting out, is it's so niche. Like, comes down to like an individual, and like, think about someone's life, how many stories they got, and you're attached to like one event, like someone might do, and I just think that's really incredible.
Yeah, because it interests me, so I just kind of hope it interests other people. But yeah, going into a very micro kind of close up look, it's like a peek into a little slice of history. It's not necessarily something that that's gonna change the history of books, but to hopefully give people something that's interesting, where they might take that and then look further into that particular topic, or there might be an aspect of the video that's not the main focus that ticks something in someone's brain. They go, you know what, that's really interesting. He only spent 3 seconds talking about it, but I'm going to spend the next 3 hours, really going deep dive into that.
Is there a dark side of history that you've discovered, or like you try to stay away from? Or
I think in Australia, the first thing is probably the Indigenous side, and there's a lot around that, and that was quite well documented, the poor treatment of those people. And I made a video about this Indigenous guy in Australia, in Newcastle, an elder, and he was murdered by 2 convicts, and those convicts ended up being hanged for it. This was like in the 1820s, so the first white people to be tried and executed for killing an Indigenous guy.
The first?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, and it happened in up near the cathedral in Newcastle. So I made a video about this, and about how these 2 convicts were the first. Well, one of them was executed, the other one was acquitted. But yeah, it was the first instance of going through a full trial and being convicted over murdering an Aboriginal man or an Aboriginal person. And I made a video about this, and then there were quite a few comments from people saying, oh, get over it, it was 200 years ago, things like this. And I was like, it's hard to turn the comments off on that, which was really disheartening, because I was trying to just shed light on the fact that Newcastle is connected to this very dark side of history and what happened in that instance. And unfortunately, there was that response to it, and it was the loud minority, which I somewhat expected, sadly, going into it, that topic. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of dark topics that aren't joyful, so you're not going to get joyful comments from it, whereas some of the more happy or obscure in a way that's a bit silly, people, it's something that kind of brings dopamine, whereas if it's a negative topic or a topic that's a little bit on the dark side, it can have the opposite effect.
It's a shame that when you get comments like that.
Yeah, it was like that was a one-off. Most of the comments are usually pretty positive, or
but still, just for you're telling the truth and telling an important story. It's can't it just be that? Yeah,
you'd think so. Yeah, unfortunately, it was a minority, but they were just
What whether or not I should say what drives you, but this is clearly just a big passion and something that you have so much love for, and then you're turning it somewhat into work, and you're putting yourself out there as a professional now in this space. Is there any hesitations of going, I don't want to touch this thing that I have that gives me so much joy? You put yourself out there in the firing line to be judged, critiqued, or Do you get much of that? Like, how do you kind of navigate, well, I still want to put it out for the people that are interested, but then I've got to face the other people that might not like me digging some of this stuff up.
Well, I've been publishing videos online for about 10 years, 12 years maybe. And over those years, there's been a lot of people. You're exposed to everyone. It's the internet. There's no one's off limits. So I've definitely become used to it and grown a bit of a thick skin or an understanding in why people might be commenting those things or differentiating between, of course, constructive criticism and someone that's just being a bit of a troll. It hasn't. Some of the really horrible comments are a bit disheartening, but they're definitely a minority. Like, there's been a few times where there was this one time where a guy made a comment and then he had made other accounts to respond to his own comments. It was about me. It was just a personal attack. It was like one after the other.
Really?
Yeah. And he was making the same grammatical errors and things. I'm like, it's the same account.
He's got way too much time on his hands.
Yeah. And they were like, anyway. And there's been a few instances like that. And it's like, you just need to understand that maybe they're going through something.
Yeah.
And this is how they're putting it out into the world, I guess. So I try not to focus on it too much, but when it's not an attack on me, if it's an attack on the topic, like with that one where they're like, oh, it was 200 years ago, it's like, I'm just going to turn the comments off because that's not helping anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does that, like, do you think about what content you're going to put out or what story you're going to put out, ever thinking about how the audience might
always
receive it in that regard?
Yeah, always in firstly, I like to communicate in a way that's accessible to most people or understood by most people, because a lot of the topics they might use obscure language or there might be topics that aren't just common knowledge. So putting that complex idea into a way that's understood by someone that's 13 or 83, no matter what the topic is kind of number one. But also, understanding that some people disagree, and if it's something that's a little more politically charged or could be used in some instances as a political weapon, I just need to be a bit more conscious of that. So most of the topics are neutral, and I'm just telling it as it happened. I'm not taking a side on something, because that's not what I'm doing. I'm just here to recount history and share it in a way that's accessible and easily understood.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Unreal. Mate, I might wrap it there.
Yeah.
I'm going to have this up online so people, if they're watching it, can still come to the screening before the 8th of March.
Yep.
Yeah, sweet. So I'm going to have that live. I'll have the link below. Do you want to just shout out to any of your channels if people want to look up your videos? And
Yeah, so it's called Our Past, so OURPAST, and all social platforms, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, it's just Our Past. So, you can look that up. I've got a website too, ourpast.au.
Fantastic. Thanks heaps, mate.
No worries. Thank you so much.
Really appreciate it.